Good afternoon, students. I hope you're all doing well. Now, we have already covered the first topic, that is the sources of ancient Indian history. Now, moving on to the second one, that is the Stone Ages. Right? Now, just to remind you on the basis of which historians have classified ancient Indian history, it is divided into the prehistoric and historical phases. डिफरेंस क्या है दोनों के बीच में? The evidence that is available for us to study these periods. For the prehistoric phase, only archaeological evidence exists. Whereas for the historical phase, both archaeology and literature can be used to recreate the past. ठीक है? Now, this left a particular gap in history writing. That means there were certain phases in ancient Indian history for which written records were available, but they could not be utilized or were not contemporary to the period of analysis. And this resulted in the insertion of a new phase known as proto-historical phase. Now, there are two separate criterias for the definition of proto-historical phase. Criteria number 1 क्या है? That written records exist, but they can either not be utilized or are not contemporary. ठीक है? Can you cite particular examples from Indian history which fit this criteria? One phase where written records exist but cannot be utilized. Harappan civilization. And one phase for which written records are present but do not belong to the period of study. The Vedic age. Vedic literature was composed during the Vedic period but compiled much later. ठीक है? Then another criteria was also added to this. क्या है ये? Phases in which agriculture started. Right? And by this criteria, even some portions of the Stone Age or Metal Age also qualify as proto-historic periods, such as the Neolithic Age or the Chalcolithic Age or the Megalithic Age, etc. ठीक है? नाउ लुकिंग एट दिस डिवीजन, हम प्री हिस्टोरिक फेज में कौन कौन से पीरियड्स को रख सकते हैं? That means those phases for which the study of history is based on the use of archaeological evidence only, since written records do not exist. The Stone Ages. And historical phase में the entire history of India from the Mahajanpad period right up to the post-Gupta period, right up to the early medieval age. (600 BC) to the early medieval age, that is 750 to 1200 CE. ठीक है, तो ये पूरा का पूरा पीरियड आ जाएगा हिस्टोरिकल फेज में. एंड व्हाट डज दैट लीव अस विद? बीच में क्या बचता है? दी हड़प्पन सिविलाइजेशन टू दी Vedic age. Beginning of the Harappan civilization to the end of the Vedic age. That is roughly 2300 BCE right up to 600 BCE. ठीक है, अभी हमें क्या कवर करना है? The Stone Ages, that is prehistoric phase. Now, why is this period known as the Stone Age? Because human beings in this stage of their evolution were using stone tools. ठीक है, now this has been divided into 3 further subdivisions, that is the Paleolithic Age, Mesolithic Age, and Neolithic Age. टाइम पीरियड क्या है इनका? Paleolithic Age roughly 5 lakh years ago to roughly 10,000 BC. Mesolithic Age का roughly 10,000 BC to 6,000 BC. And Neolithic Age का roughly 6,000 BC to roughly 1,000 BC. It was around 1,000 BC that the last Neolithic cultures disappeared or transformed from the Indian subcontinent. ठीक है, now the Paleolithic Age, इसको Paleolithic क्यों बोलते हैं? Paleo का मतलब होता है old, lith का मतलब होता है stone, so this is the old Stone Age. Similarly, Mesolithic is the middle Stone Age, and Neolithic is the new Stone Age. Why old, middle and new? सबसे पहले तो ये सबसे पुराना है, दैट इज वाई ओल्ड, ये वाला सबसे नया है, इट इज द न्यूएस्ट. एंड सेकेंडली, with the passage of time, humans became more and more adept in life. Their dominance over the environment became stronger and their technological base improved. Their subsistence pattern also changed. The way in which they interacted with each other and with their environment underwent significant changes. ठीक है. बेसिक डिफरेंशिएटर क्या है इन तीनों के बीच में? The way in which human beings used to obtain food. ठीक है. पेलियोलिथिक एज का सब्सिस्टेंस पैटर्न किससे कैरेक्टराइज्ड है? ह्यूमन बींग्स एट दिस स्टेज वर foraging for food. They were hunter gatherers. एंड नियोलिथिक में सबसे बड़ा चेंज क्या आया? That they began domesticating animals and cultivating crops, right? So animal domestication and agriculture began in a major way, permanently transforming the relationship that man had with nature. Earlier, he was simply a food consumer, completely dependent upon nature for subsistence. Now he became a food producer, right? Now, later on, as the knowledge of archaeology improved, the archaeologists and historians came to the conclusion that बीच में ये जो 3-4 हजार साल का पीरियड है, this should be seen as an age of transition. Age of transition between what? Between the Paleolithic and the Neolithic ages. So Mesolithic age में क्या आपको देखने के लिए मिलेगा? That some features from the Paleolithic age are going to continue and some features which would later emerge in a major way in the Neolithic age, that are also going to be present. ठीक है. So while hunting and gathering continued to remain a very significant activity for the Mesolithic people, some communities of Mesolithic people also began domesticating animals and started conducting agriculture at a lower level of sophistication. ठीक है. Now, coming to the Paleolithic age itself, it can further be subdivided into three parts: the lower Paleolithic age, middle Paleolithic age, and the upper Paleolithic age. ठीक. सबसे पुराना वाला इसमें से कौन सा होगा? Lower Paleolithic age. Why are they known as the lower, middle, and upper Paleolithic ages? हाँ, तो excavations vertically top to bottom होते हैं, right? And the layers excavated near the top, they have been deposited relatively, you can say relatively later on, right? Whereas the oldest deposits, they are going to be at the bottom of this entire stratigraphic layer. बीच में middle age के deposits मिलेंगे. So lower Paleolithic, middle Paleolithic and upper Paleolithic age, right? Now time period क्या है इसका? 5 lakh years ago, lower Paleolithic का, up to roughly 50,000 BC. Middle Paleolithic, 50,000 to roughly 30,000 BC. And upper Paleolithic from roughly 30,000 to 10,000 BC. Right? But one thing I would like to inform you at this point of time, these dates are never fixed. Okay? They are simply instructive in nature. For example, earlier it was believed that the earliest evidence of Paleolithic phase of life in India belongs to roughly 1.5 lakh years ago. Okay? So, or 1.25 lakh years ago. So this was considered to be the earliest date for the beginning of Paleolithic age in India. However, later on, discoveries at a place called Atirapakkam in modern Tamil Nadu have pushed this date back to 3.85 lakh years ago. राइट? तो क्या पता लगता है हमें ये डेट्स फिक्स्ड हैं या नहीं है? नहीं है. सिमिलरली नियोलिथिक पीरियड का हमने क्या डेट रखा है? 6000 to 1000 BC. But in the subcontinent, the earliest Neolithic site was Mehergarh. Over here, a sophisticated Neolithic settlement emerged as early as 7000 BC. However, in the case of Tamil Nadu, the earliest Neolithic settlements emerged as late as 2000 BC. ठीक है? तो जैसे आप दुनिया में सारे देशों को देखते हो, some countries are more developed, some countries are less developed. Even in India, some states are more developed, some states are less developed. वैसे ही ह्यूमन एवोल्यूशन भी अलग अलग पेसेस पे अलग अलग रीजन्स में हो रहा था. इज दिस क्लियर? नाउ what is the basis for the division of the stone ages into these three ages: Paleolithic, Mesolithic and Neolithic? First of all, the technology that the people were using. कुछ टेक्नोलॉजी को आइडेंटिफाई किया गया है एज पेलियोलिथिक, कुछ को मीजोलिथिक, कुछ को नियोलिथिक जैसे. सेकेंडली, द क्लाइमेट, flora and fauna which existed over this long period, it also evolved over time and had a direct impact on the living conditions. So each period had its own distinct climate and was dominated by its own distinct flora and fauna. Then, thirdly, a major differentiator, historically speaking, was the subsistence pattern. How did human beings in these phases used to obtain their food? Paleolithic में जैसे हमने देखा, there were hunter-gatherers primarily. During the Neolithic, agriculture and animal domestication had replaced hunting-gathering activities to a great extent. But during the Mesolithic, transformation was taking place. ठीक है? Then, differentiation can also be done on the basis of settlement and dwelling pattern. Right? So, what was the nature of settlement? Did people use to live for extended periods of time in the same location, or did they use to continuously move about? Did they build permanent settlements, artificial settlements, or did they use natural shelters only? Right? On this basis also differentiation can be done. Fifthly, on the basis of cultural activities. So, whether they used to pursue any artistic activities, कोई art करते थे, painting for example, or did they have any religious beliefs? Did they believe in the concept of life after death? What kinds of gods did they worship? What was the nature of their religion? So these kinds of things. So as human development would go on, उनका belief system भी change होता रहेगा. And finally, social and political organization के basis पर. ठीक है? And you are going to find that जब हम प्री हिस्ट्री को कवर करेंगे तो इन्हीं चीजों को तोड़ मरोड़ के अपने डायमेंशंस की तरह इंक्लूड करेंगे. फॉर एग्जांपल, इन द केस ऑफ द पेलियोलिथिक एज, व्हाट आर द डायमेंशंस? दैट वी विल बी फोकसिंग अपॉन. क्या देखने के लिए मिलेगा? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, ह्यूमन एवोल्यूशन, how human beings evolved into modern humans, that is the Homo sapiens sapiens, from their primate ancestors. Secondly, we'll have to develop a good understanding of the climate in which our ancestors used to dwell. What were the challenges that they needed to overcome, climatically speaking? Thirdly, how did they respond to these challenges by adapting with their natural environment and honing their ability to use tools? तो टेक्नोलॉजी के ऊपर डिस्कशन होगा. Then a discussion is going to take place with regards to their subsistence pattern. How did they use to obtain food? Then we should also keep an eye on their dwelling and settlement pattern. Further, we should also have awareness of which areas of the subcontinent were occupied by these people, right? So their geographical footprint we should have awareness of. And finally, what was the nature of their social and cultural activities, society and कल्चर के ऊपर भी डेवलपमेंट करना होगा, डिस्कशन करना होगा, राइट? एंड this is going to be used for all three phases, that is the Paleolithic age, Mesolithic age and the Neolithic age, so that by the end of our discussion you should be clearly able to identify the transformation of human life from the Paleolithic to the Neolithic period. Clear hai? Now, coming to the Paleolithic age. जनरल टाइम पीरियड याद है ना, क्या था? 5 लाख ईयर्स अगो टू रफली 50,000 years ago or 50,000 BC. Subdivided into the lower Paleolithic age, middle Paleolithic age, and upper Paleolithic age. ठीक है? Lower Paleolithic age from 5 lakh years ago to 50,000 years ago. Middle Paleolithic age from 50,000 to 30,000 BC. And upper Paleolithic age from 30,000 to roughly 10,000 BC. What was the nature of the climate during this period? Now, अगर आप लोगों ने ज्योग्राफी का एनसीईआरटी देखा होगा तो क्लास 11 की एनसीईआरटी में क्लियरली मेंशन्ड है द जियोग्राफिकल टाइम स्केल, द जियोलॉजिकल टाइम स्केल. The past of the earth has been divided into a number of eras, periods and epochs, right? And अभी जो चल रहा है that is known as the Holocene. This is a considerably warmer period in the Earth's life cycle. However, the Earth's climate is never constant due to a combination of various factors. कभी temperatures low हो जाते हैं, कभी climate cool हो जाता है और कभी climate warm हो जाता है, right? Back then, during the Paleolithic age, an epoch known as the Pleistocene epoch was going on. क्या है ये? This is the Earth's last great ice age. ठीक है? Which lasted from roughly 2 million years ago to roughly, let us say, 12,000 BC. ठीक है? So almost the whole of the ice age fell in the Paleolithic period, in the Pleistocene epoch. किस तरह के क्लाइमेटिक कंडीशंस रहते होंगे? वार्म एंड ह्यूमिड टेम्परेचर्स? नो. हार्श, cold and dry weather used to dominate in most parts of the year. In both hemispheres, roughly 40% of the globe was covered in polar ice caps. So, polar ice covered roughly 60% of the Earth's surface. The mean sea level जितना आज है उतना ही था? नहीं, कितना था? ज्यादा था या कम था? कम था, right? Because there was lesser liquid water available. Most of the water was frozen in these polar ice caps. Mean sea level was approximately 200 meters lower than present. ठीक है। The habitable zones were concentrated in the ट्रॉपिक्स एंड सब ट्रॉपिकल बेल्ट्स। एंड यहां पे भी किस तरह के एनिमल्स डोमिनेट करते होंगे? जिस तरह के आज एनिमल्स एंड प्लांट्स हैं? नहीं, a completely different biological footprint was present. They were dominated by large woolly mammals. ठीक है। And in such a scenario, do you think that human population would have been very large? क्यों? क्योंकि इनको हंट करना बहुत मुश्किल होगा एंड नेचुरल प्रोडक्टिविटी ऑफ द अर्थ दैट इज आल्सो लो बिकॉज ऑफ द लोअर टेम्परेचर्स। तो खाना उगाना भी बहुत डिफिकल्ट होगा। फ्रूट बेयरिंग प्लांट्स वुड हैव बीन वेरी few in number, right? So human population was extremely small. And it is under these conditions that as the temperature started to become warmer, ह्यूमन एवोल्यूशन का प्रोसेस एक्सेलरेट होने लगा। ठीक है। ड्यूरिंग द लोअर पेलियोलिथिक एज, primates that is the ape-like ancestors of modern humans, they evolved into the half erect hand using man known as Homo habilis, right? Homo in Latin means man and habilis is hand using. So he was the half erect hand using man. हाफ इरेक्ट का मतलब कि पूरा ऊपर सीधा नहीं खड़ा हो सकता था। ही कुड ओनली स्टैंड हाफ वे अपराइट। ठीक है। सो ही वॉज इन अ क्राउच्ड पोजिशन एंड लेटर ऑन ड्यूरिंग द middle period of the lower Paleolithic age, this Homo habilis, who had developed opposable thumbs, who had started using some kinds of tools, gradually evolved into the Homo erectus. Erectus is upright. So this was the upright man. क्लियर है इतना? Now ये चेंजेस कहां पर हो रहे थे? Which area geographically were they taking place simultaneously across the globe? No. What is known as the cradle of mankind? Africa, specifically सेंट्रल अफ्रीका में प्राइमेट से होमो हैबिलिस इमर्ज हुआ और होमो हैबिलिस से होमो इरेक्टस का एवोल्यूशन हुआ, राइट? सो दे इमर्ज्ड in Central Africa, and from here they began migrating in different directions in search of food primarily. and migrated in different directions. And it was this species of human beings, that is the Homo erectus, that arrived in the Indian subcontinent as well. Right? कब आई है? Around 5 lakh years ago. And that is why इंडियन पेलियोलिथिक कब से शुरू होता है? 5 लाख ईयर्स अगो से. ठीक है. किस रास्ते से आए थे? ओवर द लैंड रूट और द सी रूट? नो. मोस्ट मॉडर्न हिस्टोरियंस बिलीव दैट दे केम टू इंडिया वाया द सी रूट. अब देखो, उस समय जो मीन सी लेवल था वो आज के मुकाबले करीब 200 मीटर नीचे था. That means many of the mid-oceanic ridges in the Arabian Sea were exposed. They would have appeared in the form of islands, a small chain or long chains of islands. The continental shelf would also have been exposed. That means the distance between the continental coast and these islands would also have been much shorter. So these individuals or these groups of Homo erectus would have required very rudimentary kinds of rafts or boats to set a sail from their original location and hopping from one island to the other, travel between continents. Okay? So they emerged in Central Africa and migrated in different directions, arriving in the Indian subcontinent around 5 lakh years ago. Now, in fact, we get evidence of the lower Paleolithic age from India belonging to around this period only. ठीक है. कहां से देखने के लिए मिलता है हमको? हथनौरा इन मध्य प्रदेश. यहां पे किस चीज की डिस्कवरी हुई है? Hominin fossils की. Right? So the skull of an individual has been discovered from Hathnora. Upon investigation, it was discovered that it does not belong to modern humans. Rather, it belonged to pre Homo sapien species, that is Homo erectus. ठीक है. तो यहां से क्या मिला है? Hominin fossil. एंड इसको क्या बोला गया? दी नर्मदा मैन. ठीक है. Now, it is not necessary that in all locations we are going to find skeletal remains only. कुछ cultural remains भी मिल सकते हैं. That means the things that these people used and then left behind. So there is a place called Pallavaram in modern Tamil Nadu. Earlier it was on the outskirts of the city of Madras. Now it is part of the suburbs of Chennai. Right? यहां से क्या मिला है? एक hand axe. Discovered in 1863 by Robert Bruce Foot. ठीक है. And this is considered to be the most ancient stone tool to ever have been discovered in India. ठीक है, or at least one of them. So these two types of evidence clearly indicate that human existence had started in India as early as at least 5 lakh years ago. कहां से आए थे होमो इरेक्टस स्पीशीज? फ्रॉम सेंट्रल अफ्रीका. तो लोअर पेलियोलिथिक एज में हमने क्या देखा? टू स्टेजेस ऑफ ह्यूमन एवोल्यूशन, प्राइमेट्स टू होमो हैबिलिस एंड देन होमो हैबिलिस टू होमो इरेक्टस. ठीक. The further story of human evolution is going to take place in India itself during the Middle Paleolithic Age. During this period, what is going to happen? The Homo erectus is going to evolve into the Homo sapien archaic. Right? Archaic का मतलब old. Homo means man and sapien is sentient, that is thinking. So this was the old thinking man. Now, how do you think the Homo erectus evolved into the Homo sapien archaic? What were the differences between these two? ब्रेन साइज किसका ज्यादा बड़ा होगा, होमो इरेक्टस का या फिर होमो सेपियंस आर्केइक का? होमो सेपियंस आर्केइक का. दिस इज द थिंकिंग मैन. एंड व्हाई डू यू थिंक सच चेंजेस केम अबाउट? First of all, gradually throughout the entire Paleolithic period, the climate was getting gradually warmer and warmer, right? That means human population was increasing. As a result, population pressure was also increasing. Human beings were having to cooperate with each other in order to share the resources that were available. तो conflict को reduce करने के लिए, resources को share करने के लिए क्या develop करना होगा? Communication skills. And communication skills are possible only when the brain size increases. So it was an evolutionary push that was given by the climate. Secondly, by this point of time, human beings had also started using fire on a regular basis. The use of fire began regularly from the end of the lower Paleolithic age onwards. तो roughly 2 लाख BC से लेकर के फायर यूज करने लग गए लोग, राइट? उसकी वजह से क्या चेंज आएगा? डाइटरी हैबिट्स में कुछ चेंज आएगा क्या? हाँ, इंस्टेड ऑफ कंज्यूमिंग रॉ अनकुक्ड फूड, नाउ कुक्ड फूड, रोस्टेड फूड कुड बी कंज्यूम्ड. अब रॉ फूड को प्रोसेस करने के लिए, चू करने के लिए ज्यादा फोर्स लगता है, राइट? सो द मसल्स ऑफ द जॉ, द टीथ, उनका साइज ज्यादा होना चाहिए. जॉ शुड बी हैवी. बट कुक्ड फूड को प्रोसेस करने के लिए, चू करने के लिए उतना ज्यादा फोर्स नहीं लगता है. दैट मीन्स the muscles that were needed earlier, the heavy jaw that was needed earlier, the large teeth that were needed earlier, they were no longer necessary. So gradually our muscles atrophy honge, the bones are going to become smaller and more delicate, the teeth are going to become more refined, more specialized, right? And as a result पूरे के पूरे jaw का size छोटा हो जाएगा, right? And this is going to leave space for the enlargement, for the enlargement of the brain cavity, for the brain box, cranium. ठीक है? So these kinds of physiological changes were responsible for the evolution of the Homo erectus into the Homo sapiens archaic. Now these kinds of changes continued happening even during the upper Paleolithic age, and during this phase the Homo sapien archaic finally evolved into modern human beings. That is the Homo sapien सेपियंस। दो बार थिंकिंग आ रहा है इसमें। ही इज दी वाइज मैन। क्या चेंजेस आएंगे? He has the ability to form complex thoughts and to relay them through verbal cues as well as physical cues. Language is going to become more sophisticated. Vocabulary is going to increase. The ability of human beings to store away important facts and to retrieve them by memory, to apply the learnt knowledge, that is going to increase, right? तो इस तरह के चेंजेस आएंगे। तो ह्यूमन बींग्स आर कॉग्निटिवली गोइंग टू बी इक्विप्ड to become more dominant within their environment. Clear hai? So this is how human evolution took place throughout the Paleolithic age. A corresponding change can also be witnessed in the type of stone tools that human beings were using throughout these three phases. So टेक्नोलॉजी में किस तरह के चेंजेस आएंगे? With the passage of time, are the tools going to become more or less refined and sophisticated? More refined and sophisticated. During the lower Paleolithic age, heavy and crude tools known as core tools were used. They included items such as hand axes, choppers, and cleavers. किस तरह की एक्टिविटीज में यूज होते होंगे कोर टूल्स? ब्रूट फोर्स वाले काम में या फिर बहुत जो डेलिकेट काम होता है उसके लिए? जो ब्रूट फोर्स वाला काम होता है, राइट? These are heavy blunt objects with sharp jagged edges. So they were used for cutting trees or branches, chopping meat, breaking nuts or fruits, or tortoise shells, etc. ठीक है? तो अब ये बताओ कि इनको कोर टूल्स बोला क्यों जाता है? See, these stone tools were made out of a particular type of rock known as क्वार्ट्जाइट। ठीक है? क्वार्ट्जाइट किस तरह का रॉक होता है? जियोलॉजिकली अगर आपको क्लासिफाई करना हो तो क्या बोलोगे? इट इज अ मेटामॉर्फिक इग्नियस रॉक। इसका स्ट्रक्चर कैसा होता है? इट हैज अ कोर्स क्रिस्टलाइन स्ट्रक्चर। ठीक है? एंड प्रॉपर्टीज क्या होती हैं इसकी? इट इज एक्सट्रीमली हार्ड, बट एट द सेम टाइम इट इज ऑल्सो एक्सट्रीमली ब्रिटल। तो हार्ड तो बहुत ज्यादा होता है, बट इसका shear स्ट्रेंथ बहुत ज्यादा नहीं होता है। इट ब्रेक्स अपॉन इम्पैक्ट इजिली। ठीक? नाउ व्हाट इज going to happen if you take two such stones and bang them together? They are going to break. जो outer layer होता है because of the weaker shear strength, that is going to fall off. उस वाले जो पोर्शन गिर गया बाहर वाला आउटर लेयर, दैट इज नोन एज दी फ्लेक, और बचेगा क्या, दी हेवी इनर कोर ऑफ द रॉक। ठीक है, so these kinds of tools were made from the core portion of quartzite rocks, that is why they were known as core tools. Now they could be processed even further also, they would already possess a sharp jagged edge, right, using the technique of flint napping। तो flint napping किसको बोलते हैं, एक और कोई स्टोन ले लीजिए या फिर डियर का एंटलर ले लीजिए या एनिमल हॉर्न ले लीजिए, एंड देन यूज दैट इन ऑर्डर टू फर्दर फ्लिंट द एजेस in order to get the desired shape. For example, hand axes could be of two types, biface भी हो सकता है, uniface भी हो सकता है। Choppers can have a flattish edge or a rounded edge also. Cleavers can also be either uniface or biface, that means they have one sharp edge or two sharp edges, right? So अलग अलग टाइप्स के टूल्स डेवलप होने लग गए यूजिंग द टेक्निक ऑफ ब्रेकिंग, फ्लेकिंग द stones and then flint napping. So it is the technique of further refining the sharp edge of a stone tool, right? Now in your books you are going to come across a term known as Alkian tools. ठीक है, क्या होते हैं ये, these are relatively more advanced lower Paleolithic age core tools. Now, while these tools are found from different parts of the world, they get their name from a particular suburb of Paris, जहां पे इस तरह के टूल्स को पहली बार डिस्कवर किया गया था। ठीक है, सो दीज आर कोर टूल्स। कैसे बनाए गए हैं, कोई एक रॉक लिया है, it has been shattered so that the core portion with a sharp jagged edge remains while the outer layer flakes off and falls away. That outer layer is discarded and only the core portion of the tool is used. Clear? During the Middle Paleolithic age, human evolution में क्या change हुआ? Homo erectus evolved into the Homo sapiens archaic, right? And with that, his understanding of the technology also improved. And instead of using only core tools, now new kinds of tools came into fashion, known as flake tools. तो ये फ्लेक टूल्स क्या होंगे? These are the tools which are made out of the flakes which were earlier being discarded. तो इस वाले पोर्शन के अब टूल्स बनने लग जाएंगे। They included tools such as points, borers, scrapers, etc. And what are the kinds of activities which could be done using such tools? Digging, scraping the bark off of trees, skinning animals, making spears, digging holes, etc. ठीक है? तो क्या चेंज आया है स्टोन टूल टेक्नोलॉजी में फ्रॉम लोअर टू मिडिल? Core tools have given way to flake tools. And during the upper Paleolithic age, further improvements are going to take place, and new types of more refined flake tools known as blade tools are going to appear. These are going to include tools such as blades, burins, points, needles, perforators, hooks, etc. Clear? What kinds of tasks are they going to be used for? ये भी क्या चीजें तोड़ने फोड़ने के लिए यूज करे जाएंगे? No, they are going to be used to do more delicate work, such as making holes in animal hide, stitching or sewing, fishing using hooks or nuts or nets which can be prepared using the other kinds of tools. Then for making small incisions for a variety of purposes, ठीक है? तो इस तरह की एक्टिविटीज के लिए ये मोर रिफाइंड ब्लेड टूल्स यूज होंगे. Is this clear? So this is the change in technology that we witness. Then the subsistence pattern during the Paleolithic period, human beings were in which stage of their subsistence journey? Food producing या फिर hunting gathering? Hunting gathering. So human beings were hunting and gathering or scavenging or foraging for food. ठीक है? So they would move around continuously searching for food. What kind of food? Both plant material as well as animals, right? They would either hunt these animals or they would steal the fresh kill of other human beings or other animals. Okay? Now, what do you think was more important for fulfilling their dietary needs during this stage? Hunting or gathering? Earlier, it was believed that hunting was the most important activity for early human beings. However, as our understanding of those communities which are still living in the prehistoric phase of life that has improved, it has become clearer that gathering contributes a greater portion to fulfilling the nutritional needs of the people. क्यों होता है ये? Why is gathering more important than hunting? Because meat decomposes at a faster rate or at a slower rate as compared to plants? Faster than plants. And secondly, that at this stage, the ability of human beings to use stone tools was not advanced enough that they could use their tools for hunting animals at a large scale. At this stage, the environment was dominated by large woolly mammals, और इस तरह के rudimentary tools से लेकर के it would have been very difficult to hunt for animals. ठीक है? So technology was not developed enough to sustain large scale hunting. ठीक है? Is this clear? But it is clear that human beings were omnivores, right? That is, they consumed both plants, vegetarian as well as non-vegetarian food. Now, from the end of the lower Paleolithic age onwards, a major change took place in the dietary pattern of human beings, which put them on the fast highway of cognitive development. And that is the use of fire became common. And as a result, cooked food replaced raw food as the main diet. Is this clear? This was their subsistence pattern. Now, looking at their geographical footprint, क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है हमें? Were they spread across the entire subcontinent? Did they inhabit every physiographic division of the Indian subcontinent? No. So, they occupied the entire subcontinent except the Indo-Gangetic plains and the coastal plains of Kerala. In fact, they preferred regions such as hills or rift valleys or plateaus or rocky outcrops. The most frequent collection of Paleolithic sites comes from places such as the Chota Nagpur Plateau, the Narmada Valley, the Shivalik Hills, the Sohan Valley, the Potwar Plateau, the Salt Range. पहले 3 इंडिया में, दूसरे 3 पाकिस्तान में. So any specific reason why the Paleolithic man did not use to inhabit the Indo-Gangetic plains? अभी से contrast करो तो देखने के लिए क्या मिलेगा? That the Indo-Gangetic plains are the most densely populated regions, not only in India, but one of the most densely populated in the entire world. तो ऐसा क्यों था? Because of a number of limiting factors which prohibited the habitation of Paleolithic people in the northern plains. हमें अब क्या जानना है? ये limiting factors क्या थे? What kind of tools were they using? Metallic tools or stone tools? Stone tools. Where were they living? In artificial houses made of muds or bricks, or in caves and natural shelters. Caves and natural shelters. अब जो Indo-Gangetic plains हैं, what kinds of plains are they? Are they erosional plains or depositional plains? Depositional plains हैं. They have been created by the deposition of alluvium brought down by the Indus and Gangetic river systems, right? So ये alluvial plains हैं. Do you think that there are going to be a large number of boulders or rocks or cave formations in these plains? नहीं. And since the Paleolithic people depended upon large availability of rocks and rock shelters, therefore they stayed away from the Indo-Gangetic plains. So first of all, there was lower availability of rocks for making tools, rock shelters, and caves for dwelling. In the alluvial North Indian plains. एक फैक्टर तो ये था. Secondly, what is the nature of these rivers? Are they perennial rivers or ephemeral rivers? Perennial glacier fed rivers. ठीक है. How are they categorized? As old river systems or as relatively new river systems, young river systems? Young river systems हैं. In fact, the entire Indo-Gangetic plain is believed to be only around 2 million years old. ठीक है. So geological time scale पे देखें, they are extremely young. Back then they were even younger. And quality क्या होता है young river systems का? That they are always more prone to flooding. ठीक है. So the young perennial river systems of North India were prone to frequent flooding. That is why the Paleolithic people tended to avoid them. ठीक है. Thirdly, what was the vegetative cover like in the northern plains? Thick cover रहेगा forests का या फिर sparsely covered रहेगा? Extremely thick forests होंगे. Right? And in these thick forests, would it be easy for people to move about? No, it would be extremely difficult, especially since they did not have the ability to clear the forests at a large scale, and thus foraging, that is moving around in search of food, was difficult. And finally, the northern plains were inhabited by large wild animals in these thick forests. And very easily, the Paleolithic hunters could themselves have become the prey over here. So, as a result of a combination of these factors, the Paleolithic people inhabited all other parts of the subcontinent except for the northern plains and the coastal plains of Kerala. Coastal plains of Kerala में भी same conditions prevail करते थे. Same limiting factors were applicable. There is only one exception. In the whole of the subcontinent, there is only a single Paleolithic site situated in the northern Gangetic plains. क्या है ये? कल्पी. कहाँ पे? इन मॉडर्न डे यूपी में. Yes, frequent floods, lack of stones, etc. Good. Clear? So, this was their geographical footprint. Now talking about their society and culture. So at this stage, what was the nature of the Paleolithic society? Do you think complex social organization was taking place, well established social institutions were in place, ये सब था या फिर बहुत primitive form में रहा होगा ये सब primitive form में? And why do you think this was so? What was the nature of human interaction at this point of time? ज्यादातर कंपटीशन में रहते थे लोग. Why? Because of the limited availability of food sources, of shelter, of sexual partners, etc. So there was intense competition between human beings, and population was also quite low. The ability of human beings to organize resources so that they could support larger populations, their technological sophistication, etc., they were not well developed. And as a result, by nature, in the initial phase, initially, humans had a solitary existence. And then began living in small groups of 2 to 4 individuals. ठीक है? And why was this? There was intense competition for food and shelter. Resource availability was low, and human population was small. ठीक है? So at this stage, were complex social organizations and institutions possible? No. Write down. At this stage, the idea of social organization at a sophisticated level was inconceivable. ठीक है? Was inconceivable. Now, with the passage of time, क्या हुआ? The climate began to warm up, right? Human population started to increase, human technology began to improve, and the ability of human beings to mobilize the natural resources that started to grow. So from that same parcel of land, more resources became available. and thus the size of these groups is going to increase. पहले 2 से 4 लोग एक साथ रहते थे. Now bands of 20 to 40 individuals are going to start living together. They are going to start roaming their surroundings in search of food and shelter. ठीक है? Gradually the size of these groups began increasing, and by the end of the Paleolithic Age, bands of 20 to 40 individuals emerged. Right? So this means that human beings had started to cooperate with each other at a more developed scale. Okay? And what were the factors behind this transformation? Write down. The factors responsible for this were, first of all, the changing climate, the warmer climate. Secondly, the better technology. Thirdly, cognitive development. Fourthly, the emergence of speech. Fifthly, the use of fire. And finally, higher primary productivity. मतलब क्या है? As the climate started becoming warmer, the amount of plant life started to increase. And since plant life was increasing, that means food availability also increased. ठीक है? Next point लिखो. Thus, by the end of the Upper Paleolithic Age, a band society had emerged. A band society had emerged. Right? What was the nature of these societies? यहाँ पे क्या शार्प सोशियो इकोनॉमिक पॉलिटिकल डिविजन देखने के लिए मिलेंगे, या फिर आर ऑल इंडिविजुअल्स गोइंग टू लिव रफली द सेम काइंड ऑफ लाइफ? They are going to live roughly the same kind of life. So write down. These societies were characterized by an egalitarian organization. Sharp distinctions or sharp economic, political, and social distinctions were absent. ठीक है? Now, while it is true that sharp stratification within the society was not possible because of the pattern of their life and the nature of their economic activities, but generally होता क्या है, whenever a group of human beings come together, they naturally start organizing themselves into a hierarchy. तो इकोनॉमी, पॉलिटी या फिर सोशल डिस्टिंक्शंस तो नहीं होंगे, लेकिन पावर डिवीजन हमेशा अनइक्वल रहेगा. राइट? राइट डाउन. बट डू वी नो कि इस पावर डिवीजन का बेसिस क्या था? We cannot know that in the absence of literature. However, it is impossible to pinpoint the exact nature of social relationships and exchange in these societies. ठीक है? So whether the concept of family existed or not, ये हमको नहीं पता है. Whether there was a regulation of social interaction between different individuals, whether resources were divided equally or unequally, that we cannot know for sure. But basic pattern of the society क्या होगा? Egalitarian. Clear? Now, did they used to perform any cultural activities? Yes. So, from the Upper Paleolithic Age onwards, prehistoric paintings begin emerging. ठीक है? कहां पे देखने के लिए मिलती हैं ये प्री हिस्टोरिक पेंटिंग्स? केव वॉल्स, रॉक शेल्टर्स, and other objects. Examples: the earliest paintings at Bhimbetka also belong to the Upper Paleolithic Age. Then there's a place called Patne in Maharashtra, from where fragments of an ostrich eggshell have been found. And उसके ऊपर क्या देखने के लिए मिला है? Carvings करी गई हैं with some stone, right? Or some etching has been done. So an etched or ostrich eggshell with geometrical etchings. Have also been found. Clear? Now, what are the kinds of scenes that are most frequently depicted? क्या दिखाया जाएगा? Birds and animal figures. They are most frequently depicted. Apart from that, a few hunting scenes are also seen, right? But in contrast, very few scenes of community life are present. There is one location in present-day Uttarakhand known as the Lakhudiyar caves, from where we find a collection of handprints and fingerprints along with human figures holding hands, right? इसके अलावा किसी और अपर पेलियोलिथिक साइट से इस तरह के सीन्स नहीं देखने के लिए मिले हैं. What does this tell us? The absence of community scenes. What does this tell us? Was the sense of community very well developed? No. This indicates that the sense of community was not well developed. Although human beings had started cooperating on each other, the basis of human life was seen or was perceived through the individual lens rather than the collective lens. The individual perspective dominated human consciousness. Right? And this means that in the upper Paleolithic age, humans had reached which stage of social cooperation? The initial stage or the final stages? Initial stage. Had entered the initial stage of social organization and cooperation. Do we find any evidence of human beings having any religious beliefs? Some evidence we do get, but the kind of evidence and the volume of evidence we get from later stages of human history उतना ज्यादा वॉल्यूम में नहीं मिला है. ठीक है. So we get limited evidence of religious beliefs in the form of a statue of the mother goddess from a place called Lohad Nala. And we also get the evidence of burial of dead bodies from the Valen Valley. Covered in a red or ochre colored shroud. That means these people were not discarded to decompose in the wild, rather they were ceremonially buried with certain rituals. So this indicated ritual burial, and rituals are always part of some kind of belief system, religion, right? And these kinds of things indicate that religious beliefs had started to emerge. But do we get such evidence from across the subcontinent? No. In the majority of cases, such activities were not present. Okay? So we get limited evidence of religious beliefs. A red or ochre colored shroud. Ochre matlab गेरुआ रंग, right? So this was the stage of human life during the Palaeolithic age. क्या क्या देख लिया है हमने? Have we looked at human evolution? Yes. Have we looked at climate? Yes. Have we looked at technology? Yes. Have we looked at subsistence pattern? Yes. Have we looked at settlement and dwelling pattern? Also yes. तो ये आर्टिफिशियल हाउसेज में रहते थे या फिर नेचुरल ड्वेलिंग्स में? नेचुरल ड्वेलिंग्स में. क्यों? Because they needed to regularly move around in search of food, right? And it would make no sense to arrive at some place, find food and build a shelter over there, which would take 3 or 4 days to build, but you'll have to move away after that, right? So uska koi matlab nahi banta. Have we looked at the geographical footprint and the society and culture? Also yes. ठीक है. तो यही चीजें अब हमें देखनी है for the Mesolithic age as well. 10,000 to roughly 6,000 BC. क्या क्या dimensions थे? Can you remind me? Human evolution, climate, technology, subsistence pattern, settlement and dwelling pattern, social and cultural activities, and geographical footprint. ठीक है, तो ह्यूमन एवोल्यूशन तो कंप्लीट हो चुका है इस पीरियड तक, सो दिस वन इज नॉट रेलेवेंट फॉर द Mesolithic or Neolithic ages. We have to consider these other things, beginning with climate. Did any major change take place in the climatic regime? Yes, the Pleistocene came to an end. The Great Ice Age ended and the Holocene began. The cold and harsh climate of the Pleistocene was gradually replaced by the warmer and wetter climate. ठीक है, now the polar ice caps began shrinking. And the sea level began rising, leading to more or lesser precipitation. वार्मर क्लाइमेट है, लिक्विड वाटर का अवेलेबिलिटी भी ज्यादा है, तो रेनफॉल प्रेसिपिटेशन भी इंक्रीज हो जाएगा. दस वार्मर एज वेल एज वेटर क्लाइमेट्स. ठीक है, नाउ फर्दर क्या देखने के लिए मिलेगा? आइस मेल्ट्स. क्रिएटेड, क्या बनाएंगे ये? लेक्स एंड वेटलैंड्स. एंड इनके पेरिफेरी में क्या देखने के लिए मिलेगा? Not forests but grasslands. The heavily forested areas are going to give way to grasslands now, because at the same time that this is happening, the planet is also being swept over by warm and drier winds. Okay, so warm and dry winds are going to replace the forests with grasslands. So the wetland and grassland ecology is going to become dominant in the subcontinent. And as a result, which type of animals are going to increase in population? Wetlands में fish and bird population is going to increase, and grasslands में grazing animals का population increase हो जाएगा. Warmer and wetter conditions, are they better for human life or not? As compared to the previous cold and harsh climate, it was definitely better, and therefore human population is also going to significantly increase. ठीक है? Now, as a result, the climate presented new opportunities as well as pressures, which forced human beings to evolve further, which forced human life to become more sophisticated. And ये कहाँ दिखेगा? In the other facets of human life. टेक्नोलॉजी में हमें क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है? That new types of tools known as microliths began appearing for the first time. माइक्रो का मतलब क्या होता है? Small, and these are small stone tools. They were roughly 1 to 3 centimeters in size. इनका dimension 1 से 3 centimeters था. Right? These were either triangular or rectangular in shape. That means regular geometrical shape के थे. Characterized by sharp straight edges and points. तो 1 से 3 सेंटीमीटर के इस तरह के ट्रायंगुलर या रेक्टेंगुलर टूल्स किस काम के लिए यूज किए जाएंगे? हंटिंग के लिए. कैसे? हाँ, so they were meant to be hafted into wooden shafts to create arrows and spears, right? So they acted as arrow or spearheads. This also tells us some other things. क्या? That projectile weapons were quickly becoming the tool of choice. Sir, will there be inward migration from coastal areas to the other areas? Now, this is actually one question that was raised in the context of the factors which led to food production. तो अभी हमको न्यूलिथिक पीरियड जब कवर करेंगे तो उसमें ये डिबेट देखना है. आई एम श्योर ऑब्वियसली कि जो कोस्टल कम्युनिटीज थी दे मे हैव बीन फोर्स्ड टू माइग्रेट इनवर्ड्स फ्रॉम द कोस्टल एरियाज, बट वो जो थ्योरी है वो उसने ये बोला था that Bedwood का theory है वो, that is the name of the scholar, that because of this inward migration of the coastal communities, population pressure started to increase, and as a result human beings were forced to start cultivation and domestication of animals. ठीक है? But this is a very weak argument. क्यों? क्योंकि उस समय ह्यूमन पॉपुलेशन क्या इतना बड़ा था कि इससे कोई भी किसी भी तरह का मेजर पॉपुलेशन प्रेशर लगता नहीं, राइट? एंड दैट इज व्हाई दिस एक्सप्लेनेशन हैज लार्जली बीन डिस्कार्डेड बाय दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम. ठीक है नोरेज? ऑल राइट. हाँ, so projectile weapons started being used, and as a result there were major changes in the dietary pattern. पहले ह्यूमन बींग्स किस तरह के एनिमल्स को हंट करते थे? स्मॉल एनिमल्स को या फिर लार्ज फास्ट मूविंग एनिमल्स को? स्मॉल एनिमल्स को ट्रैप करके या फिर ऑपर्चुनिस्टिकली किल करके. नाउ विद द यूज ऑफ प्रोजेक्टाइल वेपन्स दे स्टार्टेड टू हंट लार्जर एनिमल्स सच एज बिग गेम. तो बिग गेम में आपके बोवाइन मैमल जितने हैं वो सारे आ जाएंगे, ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ एंटीलोप्स वो सब आ जाएंगे, इवन बर्ड्स आर गोइंग टू become part of their diet, right? So projectile weapons such as bows and arrows, spears, slingshots and catapults began being used to hunt big game and birds. ठीक है? एंड ये जो चेंज आया है टेक्नोलॉजी में, दिस इज डायरेक्टली इन रिस्पॉन्स टू द क्लाइमेटिक चेंजेस दैट हैव occurred. Because of the rise of human population, there was need to discover a new food source, and a new food source was available in the presence of, in the form of new kinds of animals such as fish, birds or grazing animals. Now to access this resource, new tools were necessary, projectile weapons, जिसके लिए माइक्रोलिथ्स को डेवलप किया गया. Is this clear? तो ये तो हो गया इनका टेक्नोलॉजी. Now let us look at their subsistence pattern. Now, are they going to continue hunting and gathering, or are they going to abandon it, discard it? Hunting gathering is going to continue. In fact, it is going to remain the largest source of food for them, right? So hunting and gathering continued. But are they going to continue hunting and gathering in the same way that they were accustomed to previously? No. New activities became more important, right? But some changes were visible. जैसे कि fishing became the dominant form of hunting for these people. Why? Because of the growth of the wetland ecology. Secondly, they began hunting birds and large fast mammals. At a larger scale. ठीक है, तो hunting and gathering would continue but with certain changes. Now, Mesolithic age is considered to be the transitional phase between the Paleolithic and Neolithic. Neolithic period में subsistence pattern was characterized by the beginning of agriculture and animal domestication. So, some Mesolithic communities started to exhibit these features themselves. For example, there's a place called Bagh in Rajasthan. यहाँ से क्या मिला है हमें? फ्रैगमेंट ऑफ चॉप्ड एनिमल बोन्स. ठीक है, and the quantity of chopped animal bones is so large, it means that these animals were being slaughtered at one single site in large numbers for a long period of time. That means these were domesticated animals. ठीक है, so this is an evidence of animal domestication. कहाँ से? बागोर से. Another example, Jorwe in Maharashtra. From here, in the Mesolithic context, we get the evidence of millets cultivation. They were cultivating millets as well, right? But I don't want you to get the impression that these kinds of activities were visible across the whole Mesolithic cultures. Okay? So these were these were isolated communities who had started to practice agriculture or animal domestication. Write down next point. However, such activities were not widespread. Full stop. They were confined only to these isolated pockets. ठीक है? Now, settlement and dwelling pattern. Right? What was their chief subsistence activity? सबसे important subsistence activity क्या था? Hunting and gathering, and specifically उसमें भी hunting. और hunting किस तरह का? Fishing, right? So fishing activity was the most dominant. Now, although full-fledged settled life had not emerged at this point of time, some small communities had started to construct some small settlements. And the earliest villages that appeared were fishing villages. So fishing communities had started to construct their villages along rivers or along the coast of various lakes, right? Write down. Settled life had not emerged fully, but some fishing communities had set up small villages. ठीक है? Now एक और चेंज देखने के लिए मिलेगा हमें. While during the Paleolithic age, human beings were constantly moving from place to place in search of food and shelter, अब क्या देखने के लिए मिलेगा? Human beings started staying at the same place for relatively longer periods of time. एंड माइग्रेशन का अब एक फिक्स्ड पैटर्न डेवलप हो गया बेस्ड ऑन सीजनल चेंजेस, राइट? सो इन डिफरेंट सीजन्स द कम्युनिटीज वुड मूव फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अदर. इसको बोलते हैं इंटरनीसीन नोमैडिज्म. ठीक है? सो राइट डाउन. एडिशनली humans began living at the same location for relatively longer periods and migrated seasonally. That is internecine nomadism. ठीक? Now, if they are living at the same place, do you think that all communities will have access to caves and rock shelters? No. So many communities had to start building artificial homes. ठीक है? So artificial dwellings emerged for the first time. They may have included a large variety of houses, ranging from tents to mud huts. ठीक है? Do we have any evidence of this kind of dwelling? Yes. क्या देखने के लिए मिला है? From several places we have found the evidence of uprooted bamboo. तो uprooted bamboo किस लिए यूज होता होगा? To act as posts in order to support the mud structures or in order to hold up the tents that these people used to pitch. तो tents obviously कुछ animal hides वगैरह के बनते होंगे, right? एग्जाम्पल या एविडेंस के तौर पर आप लिख सकते हो uprooted bamboo has been found from several locations such as Bagor, Birbhanpur and बाघोर. ठीक है, बाघोर है मध्य प्रदेश में, बागोर इज इन राजस्थान, बीरभानपुर is in West Bengal. Uprooted bamboo has been found from several locations such as Bagor, Birbhanpur and Bagor. तो ये जो mud huts होते थे, were they made out of bricks? No. So in most cases, these mud huts were made using primitive technology known as wattle and daub method. ठीक है, wattle किसको बोलते हैं? It refers to an interlocking matrix, an interlocking lattice. तो कोई reeds ले लिए या फिर some fibers are taken, or if bamboo is stripped and उसको एक matrix के form में arrange कर दो तो एक screen बन जाता है, right? Which is quite stiff, and this would act as the skeleton over which wet mud could be taken and daubed. So this is the wattle and daub method. So right, most mud huts were made using the wattle and daub method. Most mud huts were made using the wattle and daub method. Clear? Next, ये हो गया settlement and dwelling pattern. Geographical footprint, is it going to remain the same as the Paleolithic age, or are these people going to start moving into the plains as well? They moved into the plains as well. So write down, humans also began inhabiting the Indo-Gangetic plains. Why? क्योंकि जो पहले के फेज में लिमिटिंग फैक्टर्स थे, they were no longer there, right? The climate had warmed up, the rivers had also been tamed to a certain degree, wetlands and grasslands had replaced the thick forests, and because of the warm, wet climate of this region, this area was extremely attractive, right? So it was filled with grazing animals and birds. Began inhabiting the Indo-Gangetic plains. Okay. ये हो गया जियोग्राफिकल फुटप्रिंट. क्या क्या देख लिया हमने? Climate we have covered, technology we have covered, subsistence pattern we have covered, settlement and dwelling pattern we have covered, geographical footprint we have covered. अब social and cultural activities बचते हैं. तो the Mesolithic society and culture. क्या देखने के लिए मिलेगा? कंटिन्यूएशन ऑफ द सेम पैटर्न एज अर्लियर और मोर कोऑपरेशन? मोर कोऑपरेशन, पॉपुलेशन इंक्रीज हो रहा है, रिसोर्सेज आर अबंडेंट, एंड इन ऑर्डर टू एक्सप्लॉइट दोज रिसोर्सेज you need better organization as well as more cooperation, right? So write down the band society of the Paleolithic age evolved to become more organized and sophisticated. Gradually, they were transformed into corporate bodies. कॉर्पोरेट बॉडीज किस तरह के ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को बोलते हैं? ऐसी बॉडीज जिनके मेंबर्स में देयर इज अ सेंस ऑफ बिलोंगिंग टू अ डिस्टिंक्ट बॉडी, ठीक है, टू अ डिस्टिंक्ट ग्रुप. Secondly, within such corporate bodies, there is always going to be a conflict between individual and group interests. But some individual interests would have to be sacrificed for the group interests. Okay? So the importance of group interests is relatively higher. And thirdly, another feature of these bodies is that every member has a specific role. Okay? So there is specific division of roles or labor. ठीक है? Was it a full-fledged complex society? No, वो स्टेज अभी तक नहीं पहुंचा था. It was simply an evolved form of the band society with some corporate features. ठीक है? Write down. However, a full-fledged complex society was yet to emerge. But at the same time, major changes had become visible. क्या देखने के लिए मिला? First of all, the family emerged as the basic building block of society. ठीक है? Secondly, the sense of community became stronger. Thirdly, based on age and gender, there was division of labor. Fourthly, emotional bonds, not only between band or family members and between humans and animals started becoming stronger. Further, belief in religion became more widespread and organized. And finally, artistic expression, especially in the form of rock paintings, became a permanent or a major feature of Mesolithic life. And what does this represent? It represents that not only were human beings becoming emotionally more complex, having the urge to express themselves artistically, but also the larger amount of free time, leisure time that human beings had, so that they could invest this time in painting a large number of elaborate paintings. So, ये तो हमने देख लिए हैं जो जनरल चेंजेस हुए हैं ह्यूमन सोसाइटी में फ्रॉम द पेलियोलिथिक टू द मेसोलिथिक पीरियड. नाउ specifically when it comes to their religious beliefs, the division of labor, the forms of artistic expression, their emotional content, the meaning behind that we have to discuss in greater detail. वो हम अब मंडे को करेंगे, ठीक है. Major feature of it emerged as a major feature of Mesolithic life: paintings, rock paintings, reflecting rising sophistication of the human experience and rising availability of free time. ठीक है, चलिए then. That is it for today. If you guys have any doubts, please ask me. नोट्स मिल गए थे ना? पढ़ लिए हैं? ठीक है, no doubt. चलिए then. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys on Monday. We don't have class tomorrow.